Okay, ji, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. So, yesterday we were discussing about the science of happiness, how the science works, what are different hormones, chemicals, biological procedures, endogenous and exogenous factors which can affect our happiness. So, today we will be more looking from an economist point of view about the happiness, and we'll also burst some of the myths about the subject of happiness economics. So, in this lecture, we will be focusing on what early economic theories say about the happiness, how happiness has evolved over time, and then discussing the role of social support, income, trust, and freedom, these factors, how they influence the level of happiness. How behavioral science and behavioral economics can help us be more happy and use happiness as a policy tool. So, we all know that the founder or the father of economics, we call him Adam Smith, and we know him by the Wealth of Nation. By his book, Wealth of Nations, and he is also considered the father of capitalism. But many of us doesn't know that the views of Smith were also aligned with the happiness economics. He was not of the neoclassical view on human well-being. They only consider, most of them, consider the quantitative measurement of income and economic variables as the progress of human being. But it is very surprising, the very founder of the field, he was very much into more than just income growth or more than just economic well-being. He was of the view, rather a very famous theory of him, the theory of moral sentiments, that he was of the view that not just economic progress is important, but the tranquility, contentment, and human satisfaction, it is the broader goal of economics, not just the income growth. Many of us hardly know these views of the Adam Smith. I have just highlighted one important view of him where Smith warned that the pursuit of riches often produces anxiety rather than happiness. It's very much what the modern happiness economics says, that if we are pursuing the material well-being over than needed, then it will create anxiety and depression and not leads to happiness. And that's also being verified with the modern Easterling paradox, where we see a lot of countries growing economically, but their well-being is not increasing at the same pace. Then another early economist, John Stuart Mill, he was also very much of the proponent of the idea of human well-being and welfare. He defined happiness as the ultimate standard of morality and policy. So now you see that how the early economists see happiness as the ultimate goal, and economic and income well-being is just part of that overall goal. It's not the whole. We'll discuss what has happened in between there. Mill also believed that higher intellectual and moral players were superior to pure material or physical ones. So this is purely philosophy. That something you know, your knowledge, your skill, your ability to understand some complex ideas about human beings and the universe, it's much more valuable than merely having some wealth or income or money or resources. So again, John Stuart Mill was not like many other well-being economists at that time who see or who measure happiness in terms of numbers. They also say like, if you have 4 houses, you are more happier. If you have 10 children, you are more happier. So he was more of the view that it's not just the quantity of factors, materials that leads to human well-being. Rather, it's the quality of outcome which generates true happiness. Many of you might have heard this phrase that I have highlighted in the text box, but may not know that it was from John Stuart Mill. That he said, it is better to be a human being dissatisfied than a pig satisfied. So it's not always that we pursue happiness or well-being. It's also about accepting the consequences of being uncomfortable. That's also part of greater human pursuit of well-being. So that's why he was more about the quality of life, quality of outcome of your life decisions. So these early economists who were the founders, who established the base for this field, they come from philosophy, they come from psychology. But in between the shift away from happiness, something after that, what happens in the 19th and 20th century, a lot of neoclassical economists, they overly focused on income, resources, production, and partly because of the development of some mathematical tools, our ability to compute better. Because we can count now things, now you start counting everything. So we emerged more into, if there is econometrics, okay, if I have a mathematical formula, that's great. But they think like happiness is more like an ordinal, and we cannot measure it, so we should not chase it, we should not pursue it as a policy goal. So only something that we can measure, we can then pursue it for the policy pursuit. So this thought, between a century or two, a lot of economists with this philosophy, they took the field away from where it all started. I always see a Sufi within Adam Smith. The idea of laissez-faire itself is very universal. If you know philosophy, it's much more spiritual and human. It is a lot of human connection in that. And it's very pro-nature, that we should not disturb nature, rather we should let it work and only focus on the alignment of us being with the nature. That was the core idea of laissez-faire. Let the market work, let the people work, let the nature work. and just align yourself accordingly to pursue that goal. Do not disturb, do not overly interfere. But what we have done during the neoclassical era, we intervened too much and we left the core of the beginning of this course, that was chasing, pursuing happiness and human well-being. So luckily, with the modern computing abilities, many of the economists in the last 50 years, they come back to the idea that we have lost the soul of economics in pursuing material welfare, in pursuing higher production, productivities, efficiencies. We lost the core of all that, which was human well-being. How happy human beings are doing all those things that we are doing in an economic system. So, the idea started with the 1970s with the Richard Easterlin, who actually took the data from different countries. And what he did, he tried to create a relation whether the countries which have grown, which have posted very nice economic growth, whether people in those countries have also got better, felt better. And this was the point of inflection where the results were surprising. Many countries who have shown very nice economic growth, they were unable to portray a nice human well-being picture. And from there on, many other economists started to explore that area. Particularly, two names I would mention here. Kahneman, Daniel Kahneman, the Nobel laureates and the author of Thinking Fast and Thinking Slow, and Richard Laird, they integrated the psychology and economics. Now, this was the reunion of two which were broken up by the neoclassical economists. I will also discuss why when I discuss further into today's lecture. So these two actually highlighted, and they said, in overly relying on mathematics, we have lost the spirit of economics, which was psychology. How humans feel, how humans make decisions. So they started to bring psychology back into economic literature and come up with new ideas. So Kahneman introduced the distinction between experienced and remembered well-being, or memory-based well-being. So these are two different things. Experienced well-being is what I am feeling right now, what kind of hormones are active right now in my body. And remembered well-being is when somebody asks me about how was your day yesterday, how did your last year went, was it happy, was it bad? So it was Kahneman who separated them and identified them. He said, like, these two different well-being methods, they can be measured with different methods also. And most of the popular in measuring subjective well-being is where we use the remembered well-being, using the surveys, large-scale surveys from people, and they report their life satisfaction and other. And similarly, Laird argued that public policy should explicitly target happiness rather than GDP alone. This is the core of idea, and this is the core of this course also. The time of targeting GDP is already over. GDP, chasing GDP is not serving human beings. Countries like USA, they have outgrown their capabilities. And we have seen with the advent of this climate change and environmental issues that economic growth at higher levels is not possible. The resources, natural resources, their consumption has to have into certain limits. So, keeping our focus a bit away from GDP and adding some other perspectives. There could be human health, could be education, life satisfaction. So all other factors that counts to human well-being, we focus them in addition to GDP. We cannot ignore GDP altogether, but it should not be the single most focus of our policy aim. So thanks to them, we are back into an era where happiness economics is reviving, and especially with the advent of new economic schools like behavioral economics, experimental economics, they have helped to shape this happiness economics course. And we economists have not used it so much. Now that the self-help industry, it's a billion-dollar industry. You just check on the New York Times bestseller books, most of them are on self-help books, leadership books. The core of them is this happiness science, the happiness economics. And we, or our senior economists, they have ignored this concept for so long and chasing still many senior economists in Pakistan overly relying on panels and regressions and econometrics and mathematics and calculating something and coming up with some policy. It's no more an economic goal. The whole of the economy, world economy, is changing very fast. People are not idealizing countries which are growing. People are idealizing countries which are more human friendly, which are more oriented towards subjective well-being, which are taking care of their human beings more, which are creating jobs, which are giving respect, which are open, creating opportunities, giving freedom. These are the countries the people want. And therefore, we also have to shift our focus solely from GDP to more indicators of happiness which are around us, which have been shaping our decisions for thousands of years. Unfortunately, we forget them in the last few centuries. Post-World War, there are few scenarios that have changed. Last century particularly, during the 19th and 20th century. 20th century have seen two big wars, World War I and World War II. And we cannot ignore them from a well-being point of view, because millions of people have been killed during those wars. Economies were destroyed altogether, and world has started to begin almost from zero after World War II, not in absolute terms but in relative terms. And from there on, when people look into the fields, how to care people after war, there were people who were disabled, people who were sick, people having traumas, and you have to take care of all those people. So suddenly they knew, in addition to the economic growth, in order to feed people, give them employment, we also need to take care of them, their mental health, their freedom, their ability to choose. And during that time, some of the economists, including Amartya Sen, Professor Mehboob Haq, they developed the human-centered approach of development. It was in the late 80s, I guess, if I'm not wrong, where this thought was getting popular. And eventually, as a result of the work of Mehboob Haq, UN has created a new platform which is very popular and very effective even now, which is UNDP, United Nations Development Program. It was the idea of Professor Mehboob Haq. And also, Professor Amartya Sen, they also worked on the similar idea. So, let me work on one important concept. What has happened between the earliest founder economist? What was the disconnect between neoclassical economist and then how we revived back the soul of economics? The capitalism started to grow. The power structures, they were developing. A lot of countries get a lot of comparative advantage. So all that, they started to push their economies, grow their incomes, so they can afford wars, they can develop planes, they can develop tanks, they can develop war networks. So in order to afford those wars and those kind of, they need ignoring the ethical part of the economy and looking for chasing the GDP and economic growth. Many countries, they did that during that growth of the capitalism.
For having alliances with other countries, or
Yeah, exactly.
or making colonies or something.
So that human unethical ambition to control resources, to control people, societies, that led us to forget the spirit of economics. And unfortunately, we intellectuals, we also got prey to those ideas. But it's time that we revive the soul of economics, bringing psychology back into economics, bringing the human well-being at the core of development and our economy. If our economy is not serving the human development or human well-being, it is serving some elites. So it has to be, the well-being effects have to be distributed. There should be equality in the benefits that we draw from the economy. So subjective well-being, it focuses on the life satisfaction, positive affect, how you feel positive, your mood. Happiness can be personal, subjective assessment of life. So I already told you that happiness is very subjective, and this beauty of this concept has also led to being criticized. Many people say it's subjective, it changes person to person, so it cannot be part of policy. A policy can be something which is shared, common among a lot of people. But many of the policymakers later, they have come up with the ideas that some elements leads to, in general, well-being of, subjective well-being of overall communities and societies. It's possible to generate subjective well-being for the society. Now, utility theory is already famous, we know that. Many people actually during that neoclassical era, they started to relate that. They said now utility is a vague concept, it cannot be measured, it's hypothetical, imaginatory, and therefore they put it like ordinal utility, and they say like cardinal utility is not possible, or it cannot be part of policy. So that concept was already there. It was a very beautiful concept. Utility, the concept of utility is a very nice concept, and it actually gives the foundation to build the measurable happiness, how we can build on measuring the happiness. So utility normally we measure by satisfaction through consumption and wealth, while happiness economics we measure the overall well-being and satisfaction of individuals, not just looking on to their wealth. Maybe I am not earning much, but I may have other factors which are contributing towards my happiness. So this is the transition that I was saying, that from moving from the concept of utility to happiness economics. And this is the era of happiness economics, and we are lucky to be in that era. So some of the methods that we can use for measuring the happiness: life satisfaction surveys. It's the most common method to measure the happiness in economics research. And in these instruments, we ask individuals to evaluate their life satisfaction on a standardized scale, say 1 to 2. We have Shahab, he has made a happiness meter. So he will ask some question to you and tell you are like very happy, less happy, extremely happy, unhappy. So whatever the scale he has built. So this is how now we can measure this happiness. But happiness, it's a complex. It's not easy to be measured. There are certain challenges that we have to be considering. Subjectivity of responses that I already said. For the same, I like apple, but he may not like apple. I feel good eating apple, but he may not feel good eating apple. So at that level, its measuring is quite, so making a ground for same everybody is difficult. And similarly, cultural biases in the interpretation of happiness. There are certain days Muslims are more happy. There are certain days Hindus are more happy. There are certain days some other cultural people, like on Easter, Christians are celebrating. On Eid, Muslims are celebrating. But so this is how it is different with reference to different cultural interpretations. And similarly, eating one product, I may feel better, and it is extremely prohibited for you in your culture, in your religion. Responded inaccuracies, this could be another problem. Like sometimes your respondents who are telling you how happier they are, they even don't understand what you are asking. So these kind of inaccuracies can also be part of it. And then temporal variations in mood. I may be happy in the morning, but in the evening I may feel sad. So if you ask me to fill a survey in the morning, my response will be different. And if you ask me to fill the survey in the evening, my responses might be different. So these researchers have to consider, while measuring happiness, how to counter these biases, these measurement issues, before we actually measure the happiness. So for last, I guess, a decade or so, United Nations have developed a network, Sustainable Development Network, and they publish a happiness report for all the nations across the world. They take large scale survey data from people in those countries, And based on that, they claim this nation is this much happy and this. So this is a classical example of applying the concept of happiness at macro level, which was initially being criticized like it's not possible, how it is a very, very micro level work, only the, we can even inquire on an individual's happiness, but claiming for it a whole country, it's a bit difficult. But this is how they have been able to do it, and the recent World Happiness reports, they are really, really very insightful if you have gone through. They measured age-specific happiness, gender-specific happiness, work category-related happiness. So there are so many new ideas they are bringing into this measuring happiness. And there are different factors we'll discuss later that which the report uses for measuring this happiness. So being a happiness economist, you must remember these 6 principles. These 6 principles are the core of measuring happiness. The first one is GDP per capita. We are talking about the overall for a country. Now this is not at household level or an individual level. So GDP per capita is one indicator. The countries having higher GDP per capita can be ranked higher in the happiness. Similarly, life expectancy. A country where a person's life expectancy is higher than others may be ranked higher on the happiness index. Now this life expectancy itself cover all the other details of micro measurements. Like if you are having better life expectancy, it means you are having better environment, you have better access to health, you have better access to food. That's why your life expectancy is growing. So life expectancy in totality becomes an indicator of well-being. Similarly, generosity. Your ability to contribute, ability to help others, that's the core of human being. That gives me confidence about life itself. My ability to contribute for a cause that I love. This also contributes a lot in the happiness. Social support. When I'm sick, if my friends come to see me, when I'm weak, I have some friends to support me, to stand up. This social support, it also makes us happy. Now, this was from individual level, but when we take this from a national level, countries which have better social support system, people are more happier there. I will tell you why some countries are more happier, why some countries are consistently coming at the top in happiness index. Because their governments, they support their people in every aspect, especially when it comes to their work, their life, their family, their work hours, their health support system, their old age system, their kids care system. So they have built a system where human beings at every level feel better. And then freedom. Freedom is not about chanting freedom slogans on your Independence Day. Freedom is about your ability to choose according to your will. Your food, your education, your health, whatever you want to choose, your electoral systems, you want to choose some party, you want to choose some leadership, you want to choose the head of your, the village. So your ability to choose, it also makes you very happy. And then corruption. Because corruption is very much perceptive. if I feel the society I am living in is not corruption free, I may not feel safe. I think my contribution is going in vain. My hard earned taxes are being vain. My efforts are not yielding results. My ambitions will not become reality because of this corruption. So that's why these 6 principles are considered at the core of happiness index. And if you want to use them into policy, it is very much possible now. Many countries are actually using them. Some countries which are at the top of happiness index, they are Finland, Denmark, Norway, the Scandinavian countries. They consistently rank at the top of the World Happiness Report. And the only thing different from other countries they have is all about these 6 indicators that we just discussed. They have good per capita income, they have nice social support from the government, they offer freedom to their citizens, they have good judicial systems. I was hearing about one of the Scandinavian countries, I don't remember the name. It's the only country in the world which is closing its jails because there are no more prisoners. So they are converting that jails into some other productive buildings. It's a very, very nice example set for human being. And if we look at the global trends, countries with strong social support systems, high levels of institutional trust, and economic equality tend to rank higher. And also, I will give just one example of this institutional trust, how this matters. Countries where people trust their governments, it is very easy to govern them. The cost of governance decreases substantially. I'll remind you the case of Corona, COVID-19, which has recently passed. Countries where there was a bond of trust between government and people, they performed very well, like Singapore. Whatever was being instructed from the government, people were believing it and obeying it, and that's why they were better in handling that. And similarly, countries where there was lack of trust between the government and the people, government keeps saying something, but people did not cooperate it. Resultantly, there was huge loss of life in those countries, even USA. India and many other countries, which apparently seem to be the big economies, big democracies, but the lack of connection between governments and the people, it is reflected whenever the challenge is imposed. So this evidence supports policy interventions that prioritize social cohesion, transparency, and equitable distribution of resources. It's more about the judicious distribution of well-being. Okay, so social fabric of happiness. Happiness is not just economic. Economics leads to a lot of social beings, good beings or bad beings. That's why we keep the economics at the top. If you want to change the society, you change the economics of that. It will totally change starting from very, very beginning. That's what happened during the neoclassical era. So, research has consistently demonstrated that the quality and depth of relationships significantly influence the life satisfaction. You will not, maybe you have not observed, but That's very, very common. People who have a ritual, the regular ritual of sitting with friends every day or every week, gossiping, talking just fun, having some leisure time, they might be better than people who are earning more but have no such social gathering. So your social gathering is good. It leads to improve your happiness. I see some families playing cards together, playing that board games together. That's good actually. That leads to not only create happiness among the family, but it also gives the message to the kids what is good for the family. Communities with robust social networks report higher levels of happiness. Now, there is one is social network, like we having the friends, but then there are some purposeful networks. Networks on purpose. Purpose like I'm ambitious about the environment. So a lot of people who love environment, we gather together, we create events, we celebrate that. Now that's another social network. There are some people who like to travel. And then there are a lot of people who likes to travel. And if they become a community, they share, they discuss, they improve things in that. Now their shared objective, their ambition is also leading to a purpose. So that increase the quality of network, social network. So one is social network itself, your friends, your family, and then social networks with a purpose. It improves the quality of your social network. Okay, we also just let's try to look into the Eastern paradox that I already mentioned. This is the kind of relationship between income and happiness. Your happiness increases initially when your income increases at, at the society level or at the country level. But after some time, despite increasing your income, your happiness may not be increasing. Your happiness may not be increasing that much. And eventually, if we continue to grow our happiness at the cost of environment and natural resources, our happiness is almost possible to start declining. That's what Adam Smith has said, that when you pursue richness, wealth, income, it may eventually lead to stress, depression, and less happiness. So, as a happiness economist, one concept should be very, very clear. Chasing income is good as long as you are able to meet your basic needs, your societal needs. But if you are focusing too much on your income or material progress and ignoring all other factors that contributes to your happiness, in the long run, you are going to suffer with less happiness, more depression, and less productivity, of course. Freedom to choose, I already said. When people are jailed, some whatever, who is a criminal or who have done some offense, what kind of punishment is that? It's not allowed to go out of a certain place. You are not allowed to do certain things which otherwise you are able to do. You are not able to meet at your will to people you want to meet. And that's the freedom that you have sacrificed when you are into a jail. So, freedom to choose is considered like that. When you are unable to choose as per your will, whatever, food, health, whatever. But eventually that will keep you depressed, lesser happier. Your social trust that I already just mentioned, how it reflects in your happiness score. Happiness and health connection, it's just an explanation of what I discussed during the life expectancy. People who are healthier are more happy. People who are doing healthy activities are generally more happy than people who are not doing healthy activities. And we have discussed in the previous lecture also. When you are not healthy or when you are not doing healthy activities, you are not turning on those genetic switches in your body which makes you happy. In fact, you are turning or you are suppressing those genes which leads to your happiness. And similarly, more details on the corruption. It erodes the trust, transparency. Naturally we want transparency because we live in a competitive world and there should be transparency. If there is no transparency, the chances are people will be lesser happy. And now there is evidence, a lot of evidence on that. And social capital, that the strength of a social network, purposeful networks, they improve governance. You don't have to enforce everything as a government. A lot of things people understand and they start to do by themselves. You have seen government trying to clean the cities in Punjab. And if people believe in that idea, you don't have to check everybody who is doing that or who is not doing that. Millions of people working in public sector and corporate sector in Pakistan. If you build a better trust, a lot of cost we incur in monitoring them can be saved. So trust, it reduces the governance cost. So coming back to our idea of behavioral economics, we will discuss in detail later, but this is what we do. As a behavioral economist working in the happiness area, we evaluate the choices of a person or a society in general and then map those choices which are leading to happiness or which are leading to less happiness. And based on those habits, those choices which leads us to being more happy, we build deliberate nudges, behavioral interventions around them so that those habits and those choices can be promoted across the society. So nudges, they have been very popular lately, although they have also been criticized for being their implementation in many areas. But many of the nudges have proved their worth in well-being science. I have mentioned few, if you can read it, like automatic enrollment in pension schemes increases retirement saving. If we use that as a nudge, people are automatically saving now, so when they get retired, they have plenty of money to avoid the unhappiness of old age. Similarly, strategic placement of healthy diets encourage nutritious choices. So if you go to a food shop and we just rearrange the placement of food by putting the healthier choices in front and unhealthier in the back, there are more chances people will take the healthier choice. So this is a nudge also. So similarly, we used various different nudges for inculcating happiness among the people. So beyond GDP measuring what matters, one of our colleague in the lab, she has worked on that. She used data and see whether the Easterling paradox works in Pakistan or not, and she finds like with the over focus on GDP may not work for Pakistan. So we should be focusing more on other parts of the human well-being also. So many progressive governments, they increasingly recognize this, that growth alone is inadequate for the societal progress, and we have to have a holistic policy framework where we are not just targeting GDP, rather we are focused on measuring or integrating all other forms of happiness indicators into our policy. So this was it for today. We discussed the evolution of the happiness economics thought, what the early economists thought, what the neoclassical economists have done in the field, and now how we have revived the happiness economics as a new field, and it is becoming important for the policy. So I would encourage if you have some discussion points for now, or we can also discuss them later. कोई क्वेश्चन? ओके जी.